Okay, so this submission is looking to build an emotional, kind of heroic story around baseball prospect Hunter Nadeau, mostly using his player profile stats.
Right. And the big question for us and the KaiZen community is, can you really spin an epic tale from just spreadsheets? From OPS and averages?
Let's find out. We think the answer might surprise you. Let's jump right in.
So that theme of Kaizen, continuous improvement, it definitely comes through, trying to show elite performance.
It does, but I think the biggest hurdle here, the main thing, is that it leans so hard on the raw numbers, the stats.
Uh-huh.
And that just completely undercuts trying to build that emotional or, heroic angle for Hunter.
Yeah, I see that immediately. You've got the OPS, the SLG, batting average, all the complex formulas. It's technically sound, very objective.
But
But it doesn't give you any sense of the human side, does it? The struggle, the sacrifice, the actual effort it takes to get those numbers.
exactly. Right now it reads like player X has Y ranking. There's just no emotional hook. It's too clean.
Polished, yeah. And polished isn't usually heroic. We need to see the sweat, the grind.
So the suggestion then has got to be about infusing it with real specific examples of that improvement process, that Kaizen in action.
Right, turning the dry data points, the H for hits or R for runs, into actual milestones. Milestones of overcoming something.
Make Hunter the protagonist of his own story, not just the subject of a report. He needs an obstacle.
Precisely. So instead of just listing those stats,
We connect them to adversity, like you flagged that detail in the notes about Ranger Candy, ibuprofen, right?
yeah, that detail is fantastic. That's the kind of thing, maybe frame his high on base percentage, not just as a number, but as something achieved despite maybe a nagging injury.
So you're saying show the physical cost, the recovery, the pain management just to perform.
Exactly. Show that the OBP or whatever metric wasn't just talent. It was won through sheer will, through determination.
But do we risk, making it all about the pain? Does that overshadow the actual achievement?
That's a fair point, but I think it's about the contrast. You show the cost to highlight the value of the win. It's not about dwelling on the pain itself.
Okay.
It's about framing the achievement as a victory of that individual will you mentioned. That fits perfectly with calling him a fearless missionary or a true hero, descriptions used elsewhere.
The struggle is the story. I like that.
The stats are just the outcome. The grit is the narrative. That's how you connect with an American audience. Show the grind.
Okay, I'm sold on that. And hey, Kaizen community listening, if you've ever pushed through something tough to hit a goal, athletic, academic, whatever,
Yeah, tell us about it.
pause right now, jump in the comments. How did you turn your own stats, your own challenges into your heroic moment? We really want to hear those stories.
Absolutely. Okay, so we need that struggle as the anchor. But how do we ramp up the intensity to meet that high-impact goal?
Good question. Which brings us neatly to the second main point, doesn't it?
It does. It's about borrowing some of that really raw, visceral emotion we see elsewhere in the source material.
Right. To get that emotional impact for a U.S. audience, the writer needs to take the conviction, the high-stakes feeling from that secondary commentary.
The stuff about vengeance, forgiveness, good versus evil, really heavy themes.
Exactly. And apply that intensity, that weight, to the personal cost of Hunter Nadeau's ambition.
Because right now, that powerful emotional charge, it's completely disconnected, isn't it? It's attached to these big political conflicts.
Totally misdirected. Like you said, it's powerful stuff, but it's aimed at the wrong target. It makes the piece feel disjointed.
It's like having this huge engine, tons of horsepower, but it's hooked up to something completely irrelevant.
Great analogy. All that power needs to drive Hunter's story.
So the suggestion here is pretty clear. Inject that all or nothing feeling into his journey, his professional path.
Frame his dedication not just as, oh, he works hard, but as this deep, unshakable conviction. Set it against maybe distractions or self-doubt or the lure of taking an easier route.
Make it feel like the stakes are incredibly high for him personally. We saw that phrase, conviction versus convenience. That feels like the right kind of tension.
Yeah, that's strong. So how do we show that? How do we make his choices feel monumental?
Contrast could work really well here. You've got details about academic discipline, right? Making the merit list at Bunker Hill Community College. That's one path. Quiet, steady.
Okay.
And then you contrast that with the insane pressure of the pro sports world. Big risks, big rewards, millions on the line.
So design a moment, maybe frictionalized, maybe based on something real, where he faces that start choice. The steady path versus the high wire act.
Exactly. Show him grappling with that conviction versus convenience. And the heroism isn't necessarily which path he chooses.
It's the act of choosing based on deep conviction, sticking to his guns, whatever they are.
Precisely. It elevates the internal conflict. It makes his ambition feel less like a career choice and more like a personal crusade, a mission.
Okay, I see how that raises the stakes. And this seems like another great spot to bring the audience in.
Definitely.
Make it personal for them too.
All right, community, think about this. A moment where you face that choice, the easy way out, the convenient path, versus sticking to your guns, holding that line based on pure conviction.
We want you to weigh in, super simple.
If you chose conviction, if you held firm, just type N in the comments right now. N for no compromise. And if you took the easier path, maybe looking back you wish you hadn't, or maybe it was right for you then. Type Y for yes, I chose convenience.
No judgment, just honesty. Let's see where the KaiZen community stands on conviction. N or Y? Let us know.
That kind of direct connection makes Hunter's potential struggle feel much more real, much more relatable, which actually leads perfectly into our third point.
Ah, yes, the relatability factor, making this top prospect feel, well, human.
Exactly. The third critique is about structuring the heroic narrative with relatable anchors. Those small, specific, universal details.
Because right now, the submission lacks those grounding points, doesn't it? He feels a bit abstract, perfect, almost.
Yeah, too perfect. The tutorial is either super clinical, perfect game stats, draft rankings, class of 2030 projections, or it's quite general, like mentioning the Charlestown campus.
There's nothing really specific to latch onto, to make him feel like a real person dealing with everyday stuff, even amidst the high performance. He's more of a concept.
A category, yeah, not a character. So the weakness is he feels untouchable, distant.
Okay, so the fix. How do we ground him?
We need to weave in small, vivid details, moments of contrast that really capture that spirit of earning success. Remember that phrase from the notes? It's an earned tired.
Oh, I loved that. That feeling after really hard work. Not just physical exhaustion, but deep satisfaction.
Exactly. That's a universal feeling. That's relatable. But it's missing when all we see are flawless stats. We need to show the effort that leads to that earned tired. Inject some vulnerability.
So, concrete examples? How do we do that?
Well, you could contrast the high-flying ambition, the draft prospect pressure, with something really humble and grounding from his life.
Like what?
Maybe food. You mentioned the source material talks about regional American food, right? Silver Queen corn, Maryland crab cakes.
Uh-huh.
Imagine a scene. High-stakes scout day, immense pressure. Then later, a quiet moment, maybe he's just enjoying some simple, local food he loves. It instantly makes him more real.
Grounds him. Or what about hobbies? There was that thread about motors, fixing things.
Yes, perfect. Instead of just showing him perfecting his swing, maybe show him working on an old car, getting his hands dirty, late night in the garage.
That shows dedication, the grind, but in a totally different, really accessible way. It's not just about baseball.
Right. It makes him a person, not just a prospectus. He hits home runs and he knows his way around an engine. That juxtaposition.
That makes him relatable, makes him feel like one of us, almost. Someone the community can root for because they see the work, the sweat, on and off the field.
That small detail may be the smell of grease under his fingernails, contrasted with the green grass of the outfield. It anchors everything. It makes the whole story feel earned.
Okay, that feels much stronger. So, quick recap then. We've talked about transforming stats into a story of struggle.
Focusing on the hidden battles, the KaiZen journey behind the numbers.
Then, borrowing that intense emotional conviction from elsewhere and aiming it squarely at Hunter's personal ambition, making it about conviction versus convenience.
And finally, grounding the whole thing with sharp, relatable details. Those small anchors like hobbies or food that make him human, vulnerable even.
That feels like a solid plan for turning this from a profile into a truly emotional and heroic narrative.
Definitely. And remember, continuous improvement, KaiZen, means always looking for the next step. To really tell a heroic story, you need a villain. Sometimes that villain is external, sometimes it's internal, like complacency, or just the crushing weight of expectation.
Good point. So the next step for the writer is clear. Take those powerful emotional themes, that V8 engine we talked about,
And hook it up to Harcher's personal journey. Show the struggle, show the conviction, show the triumph. Make that the destination.
We really encourage you, the listener, hit that like button if this critique was helpful. Share it with someone else who's working on their craft.
And please, submit your work back to us. Whether it's an update based on this or a completely new project, we want to see how you apply these ideas.
We look forward to digging into the next stage of your creative process. And don't forget to drop that comment. N or Y? What defines your choices?
Thanks for tuning in.
We'll see you next time on The Critique.